Christina Feds was born in February of 1980 in Des Moines, Iowa. Throughout her early years, she knew nothing of her biological father, having little awareness of who he was. Her struggles began when she was just 8 years old, a revelation that she was half black. An identity tied to her father brought a wave of confusion and anger. Her skin was darker than her mother's and her maternal relatives, which made her feel estranged from her family's identity. Discovering her paternal origins sparked an internal crisis. She felt betrayed, believing her family had denied her a part of herself. Her first meeting with her biological father occurred when she was 8, yet, despite her yearning for a connection, they never grew close. In the late 1980s or early 90s, Christina and her mother, Denise Feds, relocated to Grimes, Iowa, a town with a population of roughly 2,600, predominantly white. During this time, Christina faced instances of racism. On April 19, 1993, her mother reported receiving racist note threats, but authorities concluded Christina had fabricated the notes herself, a denial she consistently maintained. At 12, Christina met a 23-year-old man named Anthony Leon Hoover. Claiming to be 17, she was drawn into a relationship with him. Hoover aspired to join the Black Gangster Disciples street gang and soon became involved with Christina. She ran away from home to live with him. By June of 1993, when Christina was only 13, Hoover was arrested after holding her at gunpoint, breaking her nose, and assaulting her sexually in his apartment. He later pleaded guilty to third-degree sexual assault and received a sentence of up to 10 years. Her behavioral decline worsened as she frequently skipped school and ran away over a period of 1.5 years, sometimes for days or weeks at a time. In January of 1994, the juvenile authorities and her mother decided to place her in an open psychiatric facility for troubled teens in Des Moines. During her time there, she was prescribed Prozac, an antidepressant, but both she and her mother felt it exacerbated her condition. Christina became delusional, often retreating into fantasies, and more troubling, she developed homicidal thoughts about her mother, even expressing a desire to kill her. She confided these urges to staff members, suggesting they should intervene, but was never physically violent during her outbursts, so her concerns were not taken seriously. In September of 1994, Christina ran away from the facility for a week. When she was returned, she demanded to be placed in a more secure environment, claiming she was dangerous and that her problems would persist unless she was confined. However, instead of transferring her, staff restricted her contact with her mother, who was a crucial support figure in her life. Among the most meaningful people to Christina were her great-uncle and great-aunt, Arlene and Wayne CLM, who lived in rural Polk County, Iowa. These relatives played a role akin to grandparents, providing her with much-needed stability and affection during turbulent times. During times when her mother was facing personal struggles, Christina grew particularly close to her great-uncle Wayne, who often found it difficult to refuse her requests. Wayne passed away in August of 1994 at the age of 75. About a month later, Arlene, Christina's grandmother, sent her a heartfelt letter. In it, she admitted confusion about her previous words, clarifying that she might have hoped Christina would change but always loved her regardless of her choices. Arlene expressed her loneliness but also her resilience, asking for forgiveness if she had ever caused her pain and urging kindness and understanding between them. Less than a month after receiving this letter, on the morning of October 25, 1994, Christina and 15-year-old Janine Fox left the psychiatric facility where they lived. They hitchhiked back to Arlene's house, noticing visitors there. After waiting for the visitors to leave, they entered the home. Arlene was in the kitchen talking with her aunt, while her friend relaxed in the living room watching TV. Later, Christina claimed that her aunt had accused her of being responsible for her own assault when she was 13 or 14. In a violent outburst, Christina attacked her great-aunt from behind, first smashing her head with a teacup kettle, then with a skillet as she lay on the floor. She later tried to cut her throat with a dull pair of scissors but resorted to a kitchen knife instead, stabbing her at least 5 times in the back. Throughout the attack, Christina kept chanting the name Anthony, the man who had raped her years earlier. After the assault, Christina and Janine searched for the safe keys in Arlene's truck but failed to find them. They then left the house and went to a nearby neighbor's home. The neighbors called the police, and both young women were quickly apprehended. Christina faced first-degree murder charges in February of 1995. Despite being only 14 at the time of the crime, it was decided she would be tried as an adult. Had the murder occurred just 8 months earlier, when she was 13, she would have been tried as a juvenile instead. In December of 1995, Christina stood trial. She pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Her defense argued that she was a troubled girl, lacking a stable family, her father absent and her mother often missing. They highlighted her traumatic experience of being raped at age 13, which they claimed worsened her mental health. The prosecution, on the other hand, contended that Christina was fully aware of her actions and had premeditated the murder. Several witnesses testified that she had told them she planned to rob her great-aunt to run away to Davenport, Iowa, and that she had explicitly intended to kill her. Moreover, Christina had brought a knife with her to the house, further indicating the premeditated nature of her crime. In the course of a week-long trial, the jury deliberated for 5 hours before returning a verdict. Christina Feds was found guilty of first-degree murder and received a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. A year after her conviction, 16-year-old Christina was interviewed by a reporter from the Des Moines Register, speaking candidly about her life in prison. She revealed that her mother visited her 2 to 3 times weekly, while 2 fellow inmates acted as surrogate parents, encouraging her studies and discouraging unhealthy eating. Christina admitted she lacked clarity when she committed the crime, blaming Prozac for homicidal thoughts fueled by anger over being raped. She confided that her life sentence felt like a punishment she imposed on herself, far exceeding what she believed she deserved. She also expressed skepticism about the jury, perceiving them as all older white individuals and feeling they did not truly represent her peers. For Christina, the prospect of spending her entire life incarcerated for a crime committed at 14 seemed unjust. She longed for a second chance at life. In June of 2012, 18 years after her conviction, the U.S. Supreme Court declared that mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles violated constitutional rights. As Christina approached a new sentencing hearing in 2013, she fell gravely ill with stage 4 breast cancer, which was terminal. By November, she was sentenced to life with a chance for parole due to her medical condition. The judge recommended immediate parole, and a few weeks later she was granted hospice care. Christina was transferred to a hospice facility in the Mo, where she passed away on July 27, 2014, at the age of 34, just 7 months after being paroled. Turning to a different case, in 1986, Paul Washington, known as Lil Norway, resided in a town of over 4,000 residents. 16-year-old Tracy Parker, an avid horseback rider, lived nearby. On the night of September 16th, she was out riding the horses at the Fry's stable, Wayne and Sharon Fry, who had made a deal with her. In exchange for chores, she could enjoy riding her favorite horses. When Tracy failed to return home, her mother went to check the Freeze residence, but they claimed not to have seen her that evening, as they had been out for dinner with friends. Together, Tracy's mother, the Freeze, and others searched the area, eventually inspecting the horse stable. There, they found Tracy's favorite horse sweating and signs that riding equipment had been recently used. While these clues suggested she might have gone riding and returned, there was little other evidence to explain her disappearance. 5 days later, some of Tracy's clothing was discovered in a wooded area about 2 miles from the stable. Bloodstains marked the fabric, and nearby, investigators found a red towel and an orange blanket, both stained with blood, raising suspicion about foul play. The police discovered that the red towel, belonging to the Freeze family, had been used as a window covering in their garage. Nearby, investigators also found the Fry's home and stable were broken into through the basement door, where they uncovered blood splatter. When questioned, the Frys claimed the blood on their property was from Wayne Fry, who had accidentally cut his thumb. However, blood tests revealed it was from one of the Frys' dogs, raising questions about the truthfulness of Wayne's explanation. The police scrutinized the Frys' alibi, which stated they were dining out at the time of the crime. Yet, 2 calls were made from their home phone during that evening, one at 7:44 and another at 7:58 on September 30th, 1986. Just over 2 weeks later, the remains of 16-year-old Tracy Parker, a horseback rider who had gone missing, were discovered. Her partially clothed body showed signs of sexual assault, with injuries caused by blows to the head, likely from a hammer. Medical examination revealed traces of metal shavings and fragments of old green paint on her clothing and body, along with a strand of hair. Investigating the phone calls made during the evening, police found that the second call at 7:58 was from Tracy herself, who contacted a friend. She explained she was on her way home and would arrive shortly, instructing her friend to call her back at her residence. The earlier call, made 14 minutes before Tracy's call, was placed by a handyman working for the Freeze, 25-year-old Brian Keith Lord. Lord claimed he had called his girlfriend, who had recently given birth, to inform her he would be late for dinner, and that he was heading home soon. During questioning, Lord denied seeing Tracy that night and stated he had gone to his brother's nearby workshop after leaving the Freeze house. Authorities examined Lord's clothing, pickup truck, and his brother's workshop, but found nothing unusual. Neighbors recalled a strange incident on the night Tracy disappeared. Lord, shirtless, was outside in chilly weather, watching his truck. A peculiar behavior since he rarely cleaned his vehicle and it was around 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Additionally, his girlfriend confirmed Lord was supposed to attend a family dinner that evening, yet he called from the Freeze house at 7:44 to say he'd be late. Ultimately, Lord missed the dinner and didn't return home until after 10 o'clock. The scene returned to the workshop, where an unusual sense of cleanliness greeted them. Carefully spraying a chemical on the floor revealed traces of blood, indicating a large pool had once lain there. Further inspection uncovered a red towel and an orange blanket. It turned out the orange blanket was missing from Lord's brother's workshop. Although DNA analysis was unavailable at that moment, tests on the towel and blanket showed they contained type O blood with a rare enzyme present in only about 4% of the population. Tracy's blood also belonged to this group, sharing that distinctive enzyme, linking her to the bloodstains. Meanwhile, the police gathered a vast array of evidence: shavings, paint chips, and assorted debris from the workshop. Among these was an old green-painted fence post, which upon testing revealed that the paint chips recovered from Tracy's clothing, her body, and the blanket were identical to those from the post. Investigations uncovered that weeks earlier, Lord had been engaged in dismantling an old green fence, loading its remnants into his truck. The wood shavings found on Tracy and the blanket matched those from the fence post, strengthening the connection. Microscopic examination of hair on the blanket closely resembled that of Brian Lord, prompting police to delve into his background. Their inquiries unearthed disturbing details from the summer of 1975, involving a woman named Sylvia Henderson. Living in Cathy's Valley, California, Sylvia was married to a renowned rodeo star known for his skill in steer wrestling. They had 2 sons aged 13 and 8. On July the 11th, 1975, Sylvia called the police, claiming she had been shot in the head. Responding officers found her semi-conscious and attempted first aid, but she succumbed before the ambulance arrived. Tests confirmed she'd been shot twice in the head with 2 different firearms. The revolver found at the scene belonged to her husband. Neighbors recalled seeing a young boy, Brian Keith Lord, leaving the property shortly after the gunfire. He was promptly arrested. Evidence revealed that Sylvia had come home to confront Lord during the theft in progress. As she interrupted his theft, Lord had shot her once in the head with a .22 caliber rifle, causing her to fall to the floor wounded. In the chaos, he fired again, this time with a .22 caliber revolver, killing her. Despite his actions, Lord served only 6 months in juvenile detention for this murder of a mother of 2. In 1981, at the age of 19, Lord was convicted of unlawful imprisonment after kidnapping and attempting to rape his 14-year-old sister-in-law, injuries severe enough to require hospitalization. He received a suspended sentence. Additionally, Lord's criminal record included jail time for drunk driving. Once, he collided head-on with a truck, leaving his friend badly injured. Lord and Tracy were at Tracy's home when the couple went out to dinner. Although Lord and Tracy knew each other, she had often given him rides home. On that night, Lord offered her a lift, but instead took her to her brother's workshop, which was unoccupied as her brother was out of town. Once inside, Lord made her an unsettling proposition. When she refused, he struck her in the head with a hammer, then sexually assaulted her. Afterwards, he murdered her by beating her to death, then dumped her body and carefully cleaned the scene to remove evidence. 25-year-old Brian Lord's trial began in July of 1987. Tracy's sister Shannon testified that during the trial, Lord threatened her and her family, allegedly telling her father that if he ever got out of prison, his other daughter might be targeted next. The trial lasted 7 weeks, and after 10 hours of deliberation, The jury found Lord guilty of first-degree murder. A week later, he was sentenced to death. An automatic appeal followed, and in 1997, his death sentence was overturned. During sentencing, Lord made a statement, and the judge permitted the prosecution to cross-examine him. During this cross-examination, prosecutors brought up the murder of Sylvia Henderson. The appeals court later ruled that this line of questioning was improperly allowed. In 1999, Lord's conviction was overturned a second time, resulting in a new trial, primarily because his legal team failed to present 3 witnesses who claimed to have seen Tracy the day after her disappearance. Despite the overturning, Lord remained in custody without bail until his second trial, which commenced on February 25, 2003. By then, almost 16 years had passed, during which DNA testing had become more advanced. Evidence collected from Tracy's body was analyzed, but the results did not match Lord's DNA. The prosecution argued that the DNA evidence had degraded, making testing unreliable, but pointed to a wealth of other evidence. Particles of paint chips, sawings, hair, and blood, evidence they claimed directly linked Lord to Tracy's murder. The trial lasted 2 months, and after less than a few hours of jury deliberation, Lord was once again convicted of murder. He received a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As of the time of this recording, 63-year-old Brian Lord is serving his sentence at Stafford Creek Correction Center in Aberdeen, Washington. Turning to another case, in the autumn of 2001, the King family resided in Canaan, Florida. For the first time in years, 40-year-old Terry King had both of his sons, 13-year-old Derek and 12-year-old Alex, living with him. Previously, in 1995, their mother, Janet Little, later known as Kelly Marino, had left the family. She had also claimed to have twins fathered by a different man, whom she left with Terry. As a high school dropout, Terry struggled to raise his 4 children, often working low-paying overnight jobs. In the wake of these challenges, he eventually had to place the twins in other care. Terry chose to place his sons, Derek and Alex, in a foster home rooted in Christian principles. However, after a year, the facility was closed, forcing the boys into separate foster families. The younger boy, Alex, was overwhelmed by the upheaval and cried frequently, making him difficult to manage. Eventually, after about a month, Alex returned to live with his father, while Derek remained with his foster family. Terry, a self-conscious parent, was deeply worried about how others might judge his decisions regarding the children's care. His protectiveness often kept Alex at home, sometimes even locking him in his room. In summer 2001, Terry maintained a stable job at a printing press. That season, he bought a car and rented a modest home, seeking stability for his family. By October of that year, 13-year-old Derek's foster family was contemplating sending him to military school because of behavioral issues. However, Terry agreed to have Derek live with him and Alex instead. Shortly after Derek moved in, concerns arose. On November 16th, Terry reported to the police that his sons had gone missing. He explained that he had dropped them off at school that morning, but when he returned that afternoon, they were gone. He didn't believe they had run away because their clothes were untouched, leaving only a book bag and a Game Boy missing. The next day, Terry received a call from Alex, who sarcastically told him he knew Terry was searching for them, but they wouldn't be returning home. On November 20th, Terry contacted the police once again, still worried about his missing sons. The police's response was dismissive, which frustrated Terry. In desperation, he contacted the local newspaper to voice his concerns about the police's inaction. 8 days after the boys disappeared, on November 24th, Derek's former foster family reached out to Terry, informing him that Derek had come to their home. Terry called the sheriff's office, and a deputy picked up Derek, driving him to Terry's residence. During the ride, the 13-year-old asked if he could file an abuse claim against his father. When questioned, Derek said his father wouldn't let him or Alex watch too much television and was overly strict about who they could see. The deputy, believing Terry was simply a concerned father, did not report any abuse and returned Derek home. The following day, Alex was brought back by a family friend, Ricky Chavez. Chavez, a 40-year-old man from the neighborhood, had met Terry at a flea market and quickly became friends. He had helped Terry by lending money during financial difficulties. Chavez often hosted young people at his house, where they helped him repair cars and played video games. Because Terry couldn't afford childcare, he trusted Chavez, allowing him to pick up the boys from school. Chavez then brought Alex home just before 1 a.m., establishing a relationship based on trust, which in hindsight raised serious concerns about the safety and appropriateness of his involvement. On the 26th of November, 2001, neighbors called the fire department after discovering that the King family's house was engulfed in flames. Firefighters entered the residence and found the body of 40-year-old Terry King slumped in a recliner in the living room. However, it was soon deduced that Terry had not been killed by the fire. Instead, he had suffered a fatal blow to the head. The authorities launched an immediate search for his two sons, 13-year-old Derek and 12-year-old Alex, who were missing at the time. Police approached Ricky Travis's home, where Travis denied any knowledge of the boys' whereabouts, insisting they weren't there. He mentioned that Alex had left a message on his answering machine, stating that the boys were safe but unwilling to come home. The next day, Travis brought Derek and Alex to the sheriff's office, where they confessed to murdering their father. They claimed their motive was rooted in years of mental and physical abuse, citing that Terry would stare them down harshly whenever they misbehaved and would spank or slap them. The brothers recounted that on the night of the crime, Terry had been sleeping in his recliner because he feared the boys might try to escape again. While Alex watched silently, Derek grabbed an aluminum bat and struck their father 10 times in the head. Afterward, they set the house on fire and fled into the woods. However, the isolation was too difficult to endure, prompting them to call Chavez, who then picked them up and took them to the police station. Despite their story, police remained suspicious and decided to investigate Ricky Chavez. It was discovered that Chavez had a criminal past, which included a sexual assault case from early 1984, involving 2 runaway boys whom he had taken in at the age of 23. He pleaded no contest to charges of criminal solicitation and sexual assault, serving 6 months in jail and 5 years of probation. 2 years later, Chavez was arrested for burglary and petty theft, leading to the revocation of his probation and a 9-year prison sentence. Most accounts suggested Terry was a strict father, but not abusive. He restricted Derek and Alex from watching much television or playing video games, and did not allow them to associate much with other children. In contrast, when they stayed at Chavez's house, the boys experienced more freedom. They interacted with other children, played video games, and watched television freely. In the weeks preceding the murder, Terry had started noticing disrespectful behavior from the boys. For example, Alex had been calling him by his first name rather than Dad. Consequently, Terry prohibited Alex and Derek from visiting Chavez's home. Soon after, the boys ran away once more. Terry suspected Chavez might be involved and went to his house. Chavez denied malicious involvement, claiming he had no idea where the boys were, but offered to help find them by hanging up missing persons posters. The police confirmed that when the boys ran away, they had actually been at Chavez's house, and whenever their father came looking for them, the brothers would hide to avoid detection. Under a trap door, investigators examined Alex's journal and discovered that 12-year-old Alex was in love with 40-year-old Chavez. The police continued questioning Ricky Chavez, whose story evolved over time. He initially claimed that he picked up Alex and another boy on the night of the murder, washed their clothes, and concealed them under the trap door. Chavez insisted that the phone message used to lure the police was merely a ruse. On December 12, 2001, Ricky Chavez was arrested for being an accessory after the fact and tampering with evidence. That same day, authorities decided to prosecute 13-year-old Derek and 12-year-old Alex as adults. Months later, both boys recanted their confessions, insisting they had not planned to kill their father but had been persuaded by Ricky Chavez. However, they soon changed their accounts again, claiming that Ricky Chavez was the true killer. According to this version, Chavez beat their father to death and instructed the boys to take the blame, promising they would face much lighter sentences. Alex also revealed that Chavez had molested him. As a result, in 2002, Chavez faced charges including murder, arson, and sexual assault. Strangely, the district attorney chose not to dismiss the murder charges against the boys. Instead, Ricky Chavez stood trial in August of 2002 for the first-degree murder. The verdict remained sealed until a decision was made regarding Alex and Derek. Meanwhile, the boys' trial commenced a week after Chavez's. The prosecution's key evidence was their confessions, which also implicated 9 other individuals. The defense argued that Chavez was the real killer, a manipulative pedophile who had groomed the boys, but Chavez presented an alibi. He was with his brother at the time of the murder and received a phone call at approximately 1:39 a.m. After emergency services responded to the King's residence, a 5-hour jury deliberation concluded with Alex and Derek King being convicted of second-degree murder. It was also announced that Ricky Chavez had been acquitted of any involvement in the murder. Facing potential sentences ranging from 22 years to life, the 2 boys awaited their fate. In October 2002, the presiding judge unexpectedly overturned their convictions, citing concerns that they had not received a fair trial. Instead of proceeding to another trial, he urged both prosecution and defense to resolve the case through mediation. Subsequently, in November, the brothers agreed to a plea deal, each pleading guilty to third-degree murder and arson. Derek received an 8-year sentence, while Alex was sentenced to 7 years. Ricky Chavez faced trial in March 2003 for being an accessory after the fact and for molesting Alex. Although charges of sexual abuse were dropped, he was found guilty of accessory after the fact and sentenced to the maximum 30 years in prison. Alex King served 6 years for the murder, gaining his release in April 2008 at the age of 18. Less than a year later, in March 2009, Derek was released at age 20. Eventually, Alex moved to Moola, Montana, where he struggled heavily with drug addiction. Tragically, on April 14, 2024, he overdosed and was placed on life support, passing away on April 23 at the age of 35. As of this recording, 36-year-old Derek resides in Pensacola, Florida with his family. Ricky Chavez is serving his sentence at the Century Correctional Institution in Century, Florida, with a projected release date in November 2031, when he will be 70. Thank you for watching today's story.